Hey, welcome. You're on the What is Humans podcast. If you're new to the show, the What is Humans podcast is conversations in personal development where my co-host Dennis and myself Shane discuss topics about everyday life, and hopefully you can find some value in them as well.
Yes, and of course, most importantly,
we're experts in
almost nothing.
What's up, dude?
Nothing much, man. We're pumped. We got a lot of things in motion right now. We got this new sick board that we're doing the podcast on.
Looks like we're DJs right here.
yeah, which is really what the goal has always been.
Yeah,
it's
DJs.
never been podcasting, it's been DJs.
Yeah, cool, man. I think we got a cool topic today.
Yeah.
Something that's interesting to, our lives and our goals, but I think is worth value in the themes and topics of What is Humans. So
yeah, completely.
What's it called?
Creation versus discovery.
Okay.
So you brought this topic to me. Do you want to explain a little bit where it came from and or what you're thinking?
The full quote was, "It's a very good sign if it's hard to tell if you're creating something or discovering something." Mm-hmm. So it's hard to tell. It's a good sign if it's hard to tell that difference.
Yeah.
So my initial thought of what this means, creation versus discovery, is I kind of associate when you're creating something, you're almost putting on clothes, or you're putting on a show for the world or for other people, of trying to build the life you want to live.
Yeah.
But when I hear the word discovering or discovery, it's almost like something that's more innate within yourself.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of what we'll be talking about today is is it truly better to discover what is innately you or something that you're good at versus trying to create something or force something that might not be you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that one avenue that makes a lot of sense is just this idea that creation feels like it's something that's new or never been done before, and you're starting from scratch, as opposed to discovery is something that you are recognizing that it was either one already inside of you and or somebody's done it before, that you're discovering, oh, this is something that I can also do. People like me exist. People that have this dream or this goal have come before me, and it's possible.
Totally. But I also think that the opposite is also true of that, of when you are discovering something that it is kind of innately you, there is kind of an authentic version of yourself that you have the unique ability to bring to this world.
Yeah.
And when you are creating something, it's not that so many other people have walked this same path, but it could be something that you're building for yourself too. So both can be true, I think, but that's not the point. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that, like we said, with discovery, it's you have something innately within you that as you're discovering more and more about, a goal, a path, a journey, you realize that you feel very comfortable within that realm. And it was something that you already had.
Right.
And so that's where I think it differs a little bit from creation, in that when we are creating, there's this daunting task of I need to do something that I've never, ever done before, which I'm sure is partially true.
Right.
But it's so scary to go think that you're the first person to ever go and do that.
Right.
Versus when you're discovering, it feels more like a revelation of a positive, optimistic version of, oh, I can do this.
Because it's me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Let's get some specifics, or maybe relate it a little bit more to our experiences, because it's going to just help me wrap my
mind around
this idea.
So essentially, I think that honestly for myself, it's kind of interesting. I'm on, this kind of crazy journey right now where I got out of sales when I right after school. And then I went into more of the creative field and did art direction at a big advertising agency. And now I'm going off to try and do my own thing. But I think that something that's always been in the back of my mind is that, and we've talked about this a lot on the length of the podcast in its entirety, is I've always enjoyed entertaining people and, just making people laugh.
Sure.
And that's part of who I am. And I think the more and more that I've embarked on this journey, it's been like discovering who I am naturally. And all those steps before have led me to where I'm at now. Instead of like, if I would have stopped at, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Instead of having to create this world, which I am kind of doing, I'm discovering more and more that this is what I was meant to do in the first place.
Right. How much of these like big changes, like, as you said, and what we've talked about is how you're, at least in your career, how you've made many changes. Like you've been in sales, COVID happened, you went to work, some random
side
jobs. To go back to school to get more in a creative field. But how much of this was you intentionally trying to create the life you want to live versus more like a revelation of like, this is kind of something I'm good at, or this is something I like?
Well, I would argue that for me, and it might be different or the same for you, is that I set out to create the life I wanted to live before I understood the discovery piece. So it was more like out of frustration. I was like, okay, I need to do something different because I don't love this. AKA go back to school, get into the creative field. And now that I've gone on to that, and I'm very grateful for that time in both instances, sales and, the creative industry, of doing it for a year and a half, figuring out, okay, like this is closer, but maybe not exactly it. And now on the third pivot, it's like, I'm finding out exactly what I love to do every day.
Yeah. I love that awareness, because what you're saying is it's not like an either or. Of you have to create versus discover everything in your life. What you did is you create the circumstance where you can find out more about yourself. You put yourself in the situation, you applied to the school. You did the job, you learned if you liked it or not. And that's where you discover it, by creating the situations where you could be uncomfortable or you can actually experience it, versus waiting for the day where the big discovery comes of, this is something I like.
You're completely right. The only way that I would have known that those things weren't right for me, or it was leading me down a path. If it was
right for you.
If it was right, or it was leading me down a path that was further along, is if I would have created the circumstances, like you said, of applying to school, of leaving my job in sales.
Trying something else.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I think that relates a lot to, my experience, like doing this podcast with you, or doing like, my running goals that I have. Like, I've definitely figured out like just how I love like personal growth and knowledge. And especially like I love running for like the discipline it teaches. So I think I still need to seek out and create those circumstances to really, again, discover what is meant for me. And versus, waiting or staying put. Just because then there's no discovery, or there's no change, and more of the same.
I think it's almost funny. It's exactly like you had mentioned in my circumstance, and then like what, you're going through is when you wait or you're stagnant, you've already made the discovery, right? Of like, hey, this isn't for me, this isn't serving me. But then it's like, if you don't have that like, attack mode, that urgency to create a new circumstance, you won't learn anything new. You'll just always be like, yep, this isn't it. This isn't it.
There is something to learn in stagnation, but like you said, it's what you've probably learned is that this is for me or this is not for me.
And then you have to act on that knowledge.
Right.
Because if you don't, then
then it's just more the same, and there's no more to discover.
Yeah. Completely. I think that so often as well, and this is such a cliche, it's like people talk about when they go out and do new things, or like, right, nothing, you never fail, you only learn or you grow, which is true, but it's a cliche, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about with creation and discovery is this idea that it's just a better way to describe everything that you're trying to do that's new, even if it's something as easy as like, hey, new hobbies, new activities, new acquaintances, new people. All of that is discovering more about yourself and what you like. And I think that people can get wrapped up in this thing of, oh, you tried something different. Oh, I failed. Or, oh, the business didn't work. Or,
time. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, it's not that it was a waste of time. It was just, you figured out, oh, this isn't exactly for me. It's closer.
Right.
Or you know more about yourself.
Right.
But so many people do that thing where they just like view it as, well, if I quit now, if it's a job, or if I move cities or something like that, well, then that last year and a half, I just
I think it's something
it.
we all do.
Yeah.
It's something that every single person struggles with, which is the ability to act when there's like a whole lot of effort or opportunity cost that you invested, say in a job, or it's an unhealthy relationship, or it's a place you live. And that inertia to change is so difficult.
Yeah.
And there's safety in that. Maybe there's money in that. Maybe there's a lot of reasons not to change or to pivot, in those circumstances.
Yeah.
And we have to, like, the only job we have to do is to act, on the things that we're discovering, to make the change, to make the jump, to speak up, or, just to play at life instead of waiting for things to happen for you.
How important is it to continue to seek out discovery? Like, even if it's maybe something like your job where you feel like this is what you want to do, or, you have a lot invested.
Yeah, this is something that you're good at and you enjoy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What other place, like how important is it to continue as your life goes on to seek out understanding more and more about things that you like, things you don't like, things that you're good at, things that you're not good at?
Yeah. I think something we've talked about often is like where are like situations that maybe fear is involved, or you're uncomfortable about things, and how can you use those as markers or a compass for growth? And if it's in a job and you can't present, or if it's in a job and you can't do this certain aspect of the job, in order for us to continue to be growing, is like we need to look at the things that we're afraid of, that will make us uncomfortable, that make us hesitate.
Yeah.
Because those things are ways of telling us this is where we can improve.
Yeah. And I think that when you're uncomfortable about things, it's like the significance of you could go and do it when you're uncomfortable, get better at it, and find out, hey, I mastered this, or I'm good at, I've done this and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But the whole point is you have to chase that kind of uncomfortability to know, like, okay, this isn't necessarily what I want to do, but I grew from doing that uncomfortable thing.
Right. From knowing and experiencing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can think of, I don't really talk about this story a lot, but like that first sales job that I had, I was literally, it was like you had to walk up to people.
Yeah.
And go and talk to people.
Like in Home Depot, right?
It was in like Sam's Club.
Okay.
And so you had to get over 100 times a day, 100 different people. Like you just had to walk up to people cold. And it was crazy. And so that was a very uncomfortable moment. But because of that, number one, I knew I didn't want to do those types of face-to-face sales. Number two, it was everything that's happened since then, I have no fear, because that was so incredibly uncomfortable. The amount of things that happened in that situation, it's nothing could ever make me uncomfortable as those moments.
Or that.
Yeah. And so that's where it's understanding and discovering, okay, I don't want to do that, but I'm so grateful that I did that uncomfortable thing.
You created the circumstance, whether you intended to or not.
Yeah.
Of practicing uncomfortability. And
Yeah.
it's something that we have to try and do is create circumstances for growth where we can make these big discoveries of who we are, what we're good at, what we're meant to do.
Yeah. How hard is it, or is it important to, I don't know if this is the right question, but like seek out more growth, creating those circumstances in things where maybe they're good, but they're not great. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've talked about a lot about moving to Los Angeles, but in St. Charles, I don't think it was that or in St. Louis, we wouldn't have had bad lives. You know, both of our families were there. We had a good group of friends. We knew the town very well. But things were good. Mm-hmm. But I think there was something that was eating at both of us where we wanted more to chase that, you know, just to see that out.
Right.
How hard is it like for, you know, human beings and just people in general to be like, hey, this is good.
Yeah.
But for me, I need to go try and do this just to see what's out there.
Right. I think it was something that I had to ask myself, like, am I growing in this situation?
Yeah.
Am I making decisions off of playing safe or really deciding on something that I truly need?
Yeah.
And I feel like I was making most of my decisions off of safety.
Yeah.
Versus risk.
Yeah. No, completely. And that's so funny because when you think of home, at least for me, and I think you're the same way, of like, that is a safe haven. Right. It's a place where you feel comfortable at. You've been there for many, many years. You know your family's got your back, your friends got your back, but you just labeled it. It's like safety is probably not where you're going to do your most growth or most self-discovery of who you are, what you like. It's like the same thing that you liked when you were 13 can't probably be the same thing you like at 25.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've talked about sports, and I think most of the topics like relate to the post-grad life for us of the struggle of being in your 20s and not knowing what to do. And I think that this situation of how we have to intentionally create circumstances for discovery is super impactful to the relationships we have, the jobs we have, the purpose that we're after in life. And by intentionally getting uncomfortable, you know, using fear as a compass, we can like really discover what we're great at.
Yeah. And I think too, it's not that and you just talked about that post-grad life, that 20s. We talk about it a lot right now because we are actively trying to create these circumstances and taking a lot of risks.
Yeah, we're pivoting a lot.
Exactly. And I think we're doing that, you know, because in your 20s is when you have the most ability to be agile, to move quickly and pivot like this. It's scary to me. It might be scary to other people. I don't know. Not that you can't change when you're older, but we talked about that opportunity cost and investment of maybe you find, you know, that group of friends or that place or that job in your 20s and you just kind of you go from 23, 24, and then you realize, I'm in a committed relationship, but I never really tried to do anything different when I had all that freedom. And now I'm a little bit more locked into, I've been doing this career for 8 years.
Right.
And that kind of scared me almost into doing more in my 20s because I was a little bit afraid of like, I didn't want to get to be 30 and be like, I never did anything.
Yeah. And I don't think we need to change for change's sake.
No, that's a good point.
I think it's more like if you feel unfulfilled or if you feel like you don't have a direction. Yeah. I think that's the feeling we're, chasing. And, I love the life I live and the purpose I have and, doing the podcast and stuff. But, there is more that I want to accomplish. So I think it's more these conversations and this idea, I think will be super helpful in this.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it's important as well. So how do we go about figuring out this crazy concept of creating versus discovering, what our purpose is and what we're supposed to do?
Yeah. I think we first got to like reflect in some way.
Yeah.
I think we have to really see where we are, like, do we have our needs met? Like, kind of do the exercise of like the Maslow's hierarchy of need. Like, do you have direction in your life? Do you have your safety met? Like, do you have food, shelter, etc.?
Yeah.
And really see where you are.
Yeah.
And if there are areas or gaps that you want to improve in life, those can be great markers for us to begin answering this question.
Yeah. I think especially with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've talked about it many times, or like the sailboat of life, that top edge of the pyramid, that top layer is kind of what we're talking about. And that's the self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
And do you feel like every day you're moving towards that purpose? And sometimes when you reflect and you realize that maybe you're not doing that, other things in your life, creating those changed circumstances, those uncomfortable circumstances, those other needs are going to feel a little bit shaky to like rebuild that foundation.
Yeah, or threatened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like maybe you have the job that pays great, but it's not what you want to do. In that case, one of your needs of like your wealth safety net is probably going to be a little, for a second, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, but you have to, take those risks to find out more, because hopefully that top layer is like one of the most, that's the peak of us as a civilization, as human beings, is to have that level.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was the second step you just already labeled, was like, now, like, once we've identified gaps or areas of improvements of our needs, we need to create circumstances, for change, for discovery. We have to intentionally be trying new things, explore interest and curiosity. Like, those things are great signs from the universe or from yourself of what you should be listening to, what you should be reading, what club you should be joining, what group of friends you should be associating with. So follow those interest and curiosity. And by doing that, they'll create the circumstances for this discovery that we talk about or for this change.
Yeah, completely. And then I think the third step is kind of maybe like a mindset shift of, even though you have maybe time, energy, money invested in things prior, don't think of this as like a win-lose. Think of discovery as, I'm setting out to create these circumstances to learn more about myself.
Yeah.
There's not a, hey, oh man, I tried this and I failed. I'm a loser. It's like, I just know that thing's not for me.
Right.
And I'm glad that I at least tried it because I was interested in it. I was curious.
Yeah.
There's
always going to be friction when starting something new.
Yeah.
Of beginning something, of trying a new sport, or say learning a new language, etc. Of like, expect that and understand that when you're doing these things, there is going to be a little bit of uncomfortableness in this change. So if you have that understanding, you'll be able to use that understanding to pursue what you're supposed to pursue or follow these curiosities, like we said.
Completely. So why are we talking about this today?
Yeah. For me, I think I've gotten better, or, I'm trying to get better at putting myself in situations, for this discovery for myself. I think there's more to be had of what I know and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're all asking ourselves, or maybe some days are better than others.
Yeah.
So I think that this topic around this creation versus discovery will help in that.
Yeah. I think that you brought this topic to me, and I think it was something that had subconsciously been a part of, decisions that I had made in past, but I hadn't really thought about it in this way. But really, like, looking at past moves, like we kind of outlined today in my own career, and now realizing that sometimes there's natural things that you know inside, that I know inside, that I love. Like we talked about, making people laugh, entertaining people, etc. Creating things where those things can shine. And prior to this, I felt like I was trying to be realistic with myself and be like, you can't do that, even though like that's like what you maybe were meant to do. Right. Maybe for you, it's like, hey, I love running and coaching and, personal development. But I'm sure there was part of you that was like, I mean, yeah, but I can't do that.
Right.
And then I've just, you get further and further along these creation circumstances. You're like, why can't I? This is what I was made to do. This is my purpose. This is where I feel fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And so now I've just recognized that this whole road that I've gone on has been a massive self-discovery journey that's led me to the point that I'm at now.
And not that you're creating something that's not you. It's more just finding who you are.
Exactly. And being okay with that. Accepting that. Yeah.
Love it. Let's do a quick recap. So today we talked about creation and discovery. Yeah. This idea was really just around kind of the difference, but also the importance of having both these in our lives. Of when you're creating something, it might seem like you're building a life that you're supposed to live, or that you want to live, or that you think you want to live. But by creating these circumstances, we can really discover more about ourselves, which is kind of uniquely us, uniquely authentic to us, that we can bring to this world.
Yeah, completely. We talked a little bit about the hows after that, of how we go about creating those circumstances to discover more about what we like, what we don't about ourselves. The first step being taking time to reflect on our needs, what's being met, what's not. Do we feel like we're fulfilled at that highest level of, human self-interest of, okay, I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Right. If you feel like you're not, then it becomes, okay, if I'm not fulfilled, it becomes, how do I begin to follow those curiosities, follow those interests, create those circumstances that are necessary for discovery.
Yeah. And then our third how was really just having a mindset or an understanding of how difficult it will be to change. There's going to be friction. Yeah. There's going to be hesitation, because if it's a change in career or relationship, that friction isn't a bad thing. You have to understand that it's what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. If it's an interest or a circumstance that you're supposed to pursue, because in that change is where the discovery happens.
Completely. And then finally, we talked about the whys, why we're talking about this today. I really talked about the discovery, or the realization that this whole career path and journey that I've kind of been on has led me more and more to discovering what I'm meant to do, and who I'm meant to be. And I didn't really realize that until we had this conversation today about creation and discovery.
Yeah. And my why was similar. I think that this concept and this idea is something that I need to practice, that we need to practice, of how we have to constantly be evolving and putting ourselves in difficult situations so we can continue to discover more about ourselves, and more from this life.
Completely.
And I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans. Thanks, guys.